Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Breakdown Podcast. I'm your host, Kylie Ota, and today we're talking about something that no SOP or strategy can really fix. And it's this: the way you lead yourself when you're triggered. Right. So we're going on a different theme today with the podcast. And here's why. Because the truth is, reacting isn't leading, right? If you are responding to the triggers, you are reacting, right? So you're following, you're not leading. And if you are reacting to the triggers, and we're going to talk about them in the episode, right? And you're delegating or you're trying to delegate from this dysregulated state, you're not building trust with yourself. You're not building trust with your team. And trust is one of the pillars for leadership growth. And when you don't have trust, you're bleeding fear into your culture. And your culture could be you and one assistant, or just you and your clients. Like if you're running a solo business, and if you're, at the core of it all, you're leading from fear. Your fear is actually leading you instead. So today, I want to walk you through what I'm calling the 4 T's. And if you're following me for any amount of time, I love acronyms. I love all, alliteration because it helps me to remember things, right? And, you know, if it helps me, I'll help it to help you, right? So anyway, these 4 T's are the go-to to reset when things feel off. When you want to fix everything, or you're like one Slack message away from snapping. Yes. And in case in point, one of my clients, I'm helping her manage her team, and one of the things that always comes up is the way that she communicates. And this was even before I came onto the team. And that was one of the things that she knew she had to work on, when I, became part of the team. And so we're working on it. But, like there's certain things that will trigger her. And then when she's triggered, right, she responds in this type of way. And then it pings off of the other person, and that person gets triggered and then wants to respond in a type of way. And when we're talking about leadership, right? What makes a good leader? Right? It's one who is resilient, one who is calm under pressure. So if you're reacting to triggers, then you're kind of bypassing one of the key points of what makes a leader, right? Because when you're following someone, or even in the United States, why do people, like, there are a lot of people who, voted for Trump. There are people who voted against him. And it's for the exact same reason. Like, the half that didn't vote for him, like, well, he's reactive. I can't trust him. And then on the other hand, the people who did vote for him, they're like, well, I trust that he's good for the country because he's stable. Like, he got shot and he didn't react. And so that's an extreme example, but case in point, the people want to follow a leader who is not triggered, who is calm under pressure and non-reactive. And so the 4 T's starts with trigger. And honestly, being triggered doesn't mean you're broken. It just means that your nervous system, that we've talked about here before, right? Your nervous system is sounding an alarm. And a lot of times the people who are easily triggered have suffered or been exposed to trauma because it's that knee jerk reaction that we have to something that is painful. And what happens in the body is all it's saying is something here doesn't feel safe. So, our job as a leader isn't to suppress the trigger, it's honestly to notice it, right? Because that's why it's the first T is to notice it, pause, and ask, what's really under this reaction? Because, most leadership breakdowns don't happen, you know, in well, when we're doing things, they happen the moment before you fire off that sharp message. And so, as we're going through the 4 T's, I'm going to give you some prompts that you can journal on or just even think about. And so, prompt number one for trigger is going to be what's been setting you off lately and what fear is hiding beneath it. Now, in the past episodes, we've talked about fears, right? The 4 F's: fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. So, these are the nervous system responses to fear, right? We respond when we have a fear, when we have a trigger. Oh, I feel like fighting. Arr. Or flight. Oh my gosh. Avoidant. Run away. And, right, fawning, you know, we just like, oh, like we try to soothe everything, we try to rescue, and then freeze. We just do nothing because we are in a trigger and our nervous system just shuts down. So, again, what's been triggering you and what fear do you think is hiding beneath it? And if you've taken your archetype quiz, right, the driver is fight, the I, the influencer, is flight, most likely. And so I want to see if you notice these, connections. Like, oh, I'm with this, and I do kind of resort to this. That's my main go-to, right? And the shepherd, that's the fawn. And you're like, oh, I just want to make everybody happy, so I will just push everything down. I'll pretend that I'm happy, and I will fawn and make pretend everything's good, and right. And then you have the critic who will freeze, and it is that perfectionism that is embedded in the critic behavior that will cause the freezing. And it's not necessarily like a freezing that they're not doing anything, but it often looks like analysis paralysis where they're the it's not producing any result, right? They're spinning, they're spinning, they're spinning, but nothing is actually getting done. So that's where the freeze is for the critic and the perfectionism. Okay, so second T is truth. Now, most of us are leading from stories that we've picked up along the way, right? And this is in the form of our traumas. If we have a trigger, it's usually because we've had a trauma, and the trauma is from something we've experienced in our past. And it could look like or sound like they don't respect me. So therefore, right, the driver is usually that one, right? Hey, I deserve respect. Like that's when the inflated ego comes out, like, that control and manipulation behavior comes out, like, you will respect me, right? Or there's another trauma in the past, like, oh, like nobody's gonna do it. I have to do it on myself, right? If you want something done correctly, you have to do it yourself. And that's usually the critic because everything revolves around perfectionism and control. And I want to, like, everything has to be a certain way. And if this is my standard, then I have to do it all myself. And then you have, other triggers that'll be like, if I slow down, if I rest, everything falls apart. Like, I'm the one that's keeping everything afloat, and that's usually the shepherd. Like, if I'm not there for everyone, then everything's going to fall apart. Like, if I'm not holding the team, then everything's going to fall apart. But, right, in John 8:32, it says, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And it's not, your truth, because your truth is kind of disguised in the trauma, because, right, the trauma that you've experienced paints your truth. Just like the phrases that we went through before, like, if I want something done correctly, I need to do it myself. That is your truth. That is not the truth, right? Because there's a lot of different versions of that truth, but it feels true to you. You know what I'm saying? So we have to really listen to God's truth. And, you know, whomever, whatever you believe in, right? I know this audience is very broad. And not everyone subscribes to what I believe in, but like, what is like the God's honest truth, as they say? So this is where, the reflection question would be, what lie, right? Because we're talking about how do we combat and find, find that truth. What lie am I partnering with right now? Right? What are you're partnering with it in sticking to your story? And like, no, this is my truth. This is what I believe in. And therefore it's immutable. Um, and then a secondary follow-up question is, okay, what lie am I partnering with now? And then what truth am I being invited to believe instead? Because you'll feel it, right? If you're an intuitive person, if you listen to what your insides are saying, it's like, okay, this is not something that I want to be controlled by. Like, I don't want to be controlled by my trigger, by my emotions. I want to be cool, calm, collected as a leader. But if you're getting triggered, the truth there is, okay, but what lie am I believing that's taking me out of my leadership right now? And how can I shift that into what truth am I being invited to? Right. And so that leads us to the third T of trust. And so here's the thing, right? The truth opens the door, right? But the trust is what walks us through the door. And Proverbs 3:5. And why I'm grounding all of this with the Bible is because the Bible is sharper than any double-edged sword, and it will cut through the soul and the spirit like a knife. And this is why when we hear truths from the Bible, and I'm in some mentorship programs where they're not necessarily Bible believing, but they have grown up in the church and maybe they've fallen away, or like they're not like actively walking in the word, but the truth is there. So when they speak these truths, because I hear them, right, the word is ingrained in me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that came from the Bible, or whatever, like epiphany that they've had. And I'm like, why this is so grounding? Because you can see it in the chat on these Zoom calls. Like, oh my God, it's so profound. And like everyone is kind of going off. And I'm like, well, that's because the truth resonates at that deep soul level. Right. So anyway, back to the truth, the Bible. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And I mean, this verse fits perfectly because often we know the truth, but we keep reacting from our fears. Is on one side, like trust says, maybe I don't need to fix this right now. Maybe I don't need to prove myself. Maybe I can respond from peace instead of panic. Right? If we don't wait that moment to, okay, Okay, this is what I feel like. This is what my emotions are telling me how to respond. But how can I sit with it and be like, right? What is the truth? What really is the truth? What can I trust about what's going on right now? Because a lot of times the trauma will pull us into it's like, when like, I grew up in Hawaii, right? So that undertow, that undercurrent, you're like, yay, you're just playing at the beach. Next thing you know, right? You just get sucked in by the undertow. You don't know which way is up. I think a perfect example is the movie Blue Crush, where like you're just caught in the spiral and you don't know which way is up. And you're like, okay, we'll just watch the movie or just find the clip on YouTube. And what happens is you just have to let go. The more you kick, the more you scream, the more you're like, you're fighting against the current. But when you relax and like literally go with the flow, it will take you to the surface, right? And then you can see like, okay, there's the sun. That's the top. I can pull myself up. But if you're fighting against the current, then right. So leaning into trust, leaning into flow, right? I don't need to fix this right now. I don't need to prove myself. I can respond from this place of where I trust myself. So, reflection question. Where are you still gripping control because you don't trust that God already made a way? Or again, if you subscribe to another belief system, you don't believe that whatever is for you, right? You don't believe that the path that you're on is going to lead, like you're fighting against the current. Like, like, no. And that's the control part. Like, I want to control where I'm going, and you kick and you scream, and then you're going way in the wrong direction. So how can you open up to trust and trust that the way has already been made? Sometimes we just have to let go of control. And I just want to address this. I know sometimes as leaders, we have to appear and look as if we are in control. And the way that we do that is not with, that controlling tendencies. It's self-control. Right? If you look at the fruits of the spirit in the Bible, Galatians 21 and 22, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, all the way up. What's the last one? Self-control. And I have a whole teaching about this as well, but that you start with love, compassion. And that's where these 4 T's start at. Okay, I am triggered, but how can I love myself? How can I, you know, not love myself in the egotistical way, but how can I love myself enough to walk myself through these 4 T's, give myself grace, give myself, you know, that space to let it all feel, flow, and then, right, then it leads us into the 4th T, which is to train. It was either train or transform. Who knows? It might flip, it might flop, but I'm going with train for today because we have to train our mind. And through the training, and I chose train because I don't know if you know this, but I go to the gym about 3 to 5 times a week. And it's I just like working out because it helps me like get out the energy, and I work from home. So I get to not be a hermit. I get to be around people because I like people, and I get to see people, and it's like my social outlet for the day. Um, so train. Like I love training. And I love personal training as well because in personal training, that's when you build the muscle. That's when you, right? I had a personal trainer that would like push me, and not in a bad way. He's very good. But the pushing was like, you can do it. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, and there were days where I'm like, I can't even look at what he put on the rack because I would just like psych myself out if I knew how much weight I was pulling. So I don't even look at it. I trust. And then, right, so trust and train. I didn't even plan it that way because I'm ad-libbing a little bit right now, but right, I trust in the training. I trust in the trainer that if, you know, he's a professional, he knows that I can do it, and he also trusts that I trust myself that if I can't do it, like I'm not going to harm myself. So, trust is very important. I think we've talked about it on here before, or if not, it's my other podcast, the Burnt Out Entrepreneur podcast, where I've talked about the speed of trust by Franklin Covey. And the premise of that, right? The speed of trust, your organization can only grow as quickly as the speed of trust. So the speed of trust in your organization is super important to growth, efficiency, all of that thing. And back to the T's. Train. Because, right, all of this revelation, like understanding your trigger, you know, trusting in the truth, all of it does not mean a daggone thing if your patterns don't change, right? So we have to train ourselves, right? It's not like, okay, I learned it. It's like watching a video on YouTube versus actually doing the workout. It's like, oh, that was so exhausting. I watched it. That was so exhausting. Did you transform at all? No, right? You didn't transform at all. You have to get in there. You have to do the work. You have to train, right? Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And what that means, it's like transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's not a one-time thing, right? It's not a one and done. Like, oh, I learned the lesson. Okay, I am done. Moving on. Check. No, right? It's a practice. That's why we have to train. And here's how training could look like. One, you just notice the pattern a little sooner. Two, practicing the pause. Like, hmm, okay. Like instead of like that reaction, it's like, wait, let me pause. Let me process. Okay, got it. Right. And so here's the thing, in that pause, you can look like a freaking genius. So we had a guy at my job, older guy, like he was my first boss when I started. And everyone thought he was the smartest thing, the best. And after, working with him, pardon the dogs, but after working with him for or being trained and understanding all of that, like knowing my job. Like in the beginning, I was like, wow, he is so smart. And it's because of the pause. Like we called him the professor for a reason, because he was like, a lot of people were reactive, right? Oh, this is happening. Let's do this. But oftentimes he would pause. You're like, hmm. And then he would react. And then we're all like, wow, he's such a good leader, you know? And so, right, that pause allows us to choose a different response, right? And sometimes we think, okay, we're the leader. We have to like do the thing. We have to show prowess or whatever. But honestly, like if I've learned anything from the professor, that pause just makes you like it just puts you on a pedestal. I feel like I'm using a lot of P words today. Right? But it kind of puts you on a pedestal because you're non-reactive. I mean, yes, it wasn't like he waited for days and then that will, like leaders don't wait for days. But he paused momentarily, gathered his thoughts, and then responded. So again, right, it allows you to really think, okay, how do I actually want to respond? Not how would I just like knee jerk reaction respond. How would I actually want to respond to this right now? Because right, it's a process. It's a new thing. You have to choose what you want to respond to, right? And the more you train, the more you develop these skills and the more natural this peace becomes. And like the Bible says, right, it's a peace that passes all understanding, right? If we try to understand the level of peace, like, like, oh, if I do this and I do that, like that's all strategy, right? If I do this, I get this result. If I do this, I get that result. But this, right, the peace that passes all understanding, we're not trying to understand it with our minds. And then when we just like, okay, feel into it and what would be the best response right now? And then we go like, that's where that natural peace comes from, right? Because reacting is fast. And I mean, there is a prowess to fast reaction, but if you look at anyone who is, like a good leader, like what's coming to my mind right now is, It Man. He didn't react. Like so many people tried to antagonize him, like knock him off that pedestal, but he never reacted. And it just infuriated them, but he didn't react. I mean, the same with the enemy, right? The enemy always tries to get us to react. And the way that we win over temptation to give in to our emotions and to other things is by not reacting, right? And so reacting is fast, leading is faithful. Not like, oh, I'm faith, but faith filled, right? Leading is trust, right? That's the other part of the speed of trust. It was called leading by the speed of trust. And it was a leadership development workshop that I got exposed to in my corporate container. And right, leading is faith filled, meaning we have to have faith in what we're doing, in how we're leading. And when we are trustworthy, faith filled, trustworthy, our teams can feel the difference. I mean, even if you don't have a team, but you're an entrepreneur that leads clients, or you're a mom who leads your kids. Like, like if you react, like just taking the mom example, if you react, how do your kids respond? Right? It gives them the upper hand. Now they're leading. It's like, oh baby, don't cry. But yes, we do have to have sympathy and whatever, but it's we have to make sure we're on the right end of the spectrum, that we maintain our leadership in the home. Because like again, that's trauma based. When we give in to our children and we don't hold the line, we don't maintain leadership in our home, in our responses and how we respond to their trigger, their tantrum, their reaction. If we're not holding it as a leader, because I did this, like when my kids were younger, and like case in point, like my son used to get in trouble all the time. He had ADHD undiagnosed, and the teachers were really strict, and I was like I was reacting anytime. Like I would get an email, like it was like I was getting called into the principal's office and I was having PTSD. I was straight A, but I was a little rebellious. So I was like I'm getting called into the principal's office, I didn't even do anything wrong, like what's happening? And I would be so reactive. And so when I would go in, I would be combative because I'm like, "Oh, you're just picking on me. You're picking on my kid." Uh, and then right, I already lost the battle. I was not the leader in that example. But had I been like, "Okay, yes," like, we could call it taking the upper hand, but like, "Okay, I see you, and yes, I will meet with you, and, you know, I've done also my research, and here's whatever, whatever," and like just plead my case and, maintain my pedestal of leadership in that arena, right? And not make it combative. Say, hey, here it is, blah, 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 right? How much better would my experience have been? How much better would my son's experience in school have been? Well, no, I was triggered, so I reacted and blah, blah, blah. And then finally, when he got into high school and I was already starting to do some personal development, man, I I finally got an IEP, right? And for those of you who are listening who don't know what that is, that's the individualized education plan, meaning like my son wasn't special needs, but he had needs that had to be addressed because of the ADHD, right? He got tested, and because I was a single mom at the time, and I was like, this, I don't know. Like, I'm at my wits' end. Can you help me? And getting the IEP was one way that they could help me. And then I was just combative. I'm like, you're not doing right by my kid. You're not doing right by me. But they're like, you need to do the process. I'm like, I don't have time to do the process. Why don't you just help me? Like, so triggered, so triggered, so reactive. Anyhow, uh, we're at the end of the episode today. And so I just wanted to do a little bit of a recap. The 4 T's: trigger, right? Understanding the trigger, what makes you react. And then truth, what is the truth in that? And that's where we kind of dig deeper into the traumas, like what is causing this like PTSD type of reaction. That's the truth. Because I didn't say it earlier, but like the truth of, hey, this is actually what happened to me. Because a lot of the people that I know that are triggered and whatever, like there's this like gaslighting effect that happens when we have been traumatized by people and we've been kind of like gaslit, and our feelings and our emotions have been thrown under the rug and we haven't been acknowledged. Like our feelings, right? I'm a zillennial, I think. So I'm at like the tail end of Gen X. And it was like children are seen and not heard. Like, you know, good kids, sit down, shut up, just do your thing day in, day out. Don't say a word, don't do anything. Just be a kid and like get out of my hair. But we weren't allowed to express our feelings. And so now a lot of what we're experiencing now is, you know, the trigger, and like we're an adult. So now we have the space to respond. And because we didn't learn how to respond appropriately, we're responding inappropriately. Right. So truth on like everybody has trauma. Everybody's been through it. I'm working with a trauma specific coach right now. And like there were a lot of things that she's like, that's a trauma. I was like, what? Really? Oh my goodness. So there. And then trust, right? We have to trust um that the path that we're on, like everything that is being shown to us. I mean, even listening and being exposed to the 4 T's, like trust the process that this is the path that you're meant to be on. And like trusting that you can understand the trauma, you can understand the trigger and what it's trying to show you. And then once you see all of that, then you train, right? You train to transform. And like the 4 T's are the ways that like I come back to myself before I lead anyone else. Because if I'm triggered and I respond from the trigger, it just erodes my credibility. It erodes the trust. Um, erodes the truth. Like all of the 4 T's, right? It erodes the truth, it erodes the trust, and it erodes my ability to train to be different. So if this is all hitting home, and I have an upcoming course called reflection, and it's a two-part word because reflection, right? The reflection, like just seeing ourselves as if in a mirror. But then we also have the X. So it's reflection. So are we like reflex? Like, are we being triggered? Are we having knee jerk reactions, right? That when the doctor like takes the thing to your knee and you go bing and your knee pops up, right? It's testing your reflexes. So, right, are you having a knee jerk reaction to the triggers that are around you? And this is why I created the reflection program. As you know, I've been diving deeper and deeper into this. I'm like, I need to create a program around this. I need to create a space for us to understand our triggers and like a safe container where if we say, hey, this is a trigger for me, and there's other people in the room that understand triggers, that understand their responses. And so we're going to be walking through the 4T framework inside of that program. And we're going to be doing that inner work that makes our outer leadership feel calm, clean, and clear. So the waitlist is open. There's going to be a link in the show notes that, if you want to join the waitlist, you can go ahead and sign up. Or if you follow me on Instagram, just send me a DM and say, Kylie, I heard you talk about your new program, Reflection, and I want in. I want to know why I react this way and how to be in control of these reactions. I don't want to live, out of control of my thoughts and my feelings. I want to be in control of my life. I want to be in control as a leader. I don't want things to sway me back and forth. So, um, and here's a little ditty, right? We need to regulate before we delegate. And where that song comes up, right? We have to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. And this program reflection is all about emotional regulation using the 4 T's as like one of the main tools, but it's going to be so much deeper than that, right? We're going to learn how to regulate before we delegate, because if we're not regulated and we're like, okay, we're just responding willy-nilly and we're reactionary in our leadership, the whole delegation process and leading a team is not going to bode well. So anyway, if you are interested in reflection, hit me up in the comments or in the wait list or on the Instagram. And yeah. And even if you don't join the program, just understanding the 4 T's, walk yourself through the process. You don't need me to walk yourself through that. You can go back and listen to this episode as many times as you want, but inside the container, it's a space where we get to really process things together. And it's my first group container. So I'm so excited about that, because when we see other women like, oh my gosh, me too, you too, me too. Like the safety in that, like the camaraderie in that, like, and like, the gaslighting effect just goes away. Like, I thought that was normal. It's not normal. Oh, you mean this is a trauma? You mean this is a trigger? Are you serious? I thought this was normal. No, it's probably gaslighting. A lot of those epiphanies will probably come up during the program. So I would love for you to join us. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. And if this is you know, your regular listener, thank you for listening to the podcast. And I will see you guys again next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Breakdown podcast. If you're ready to break free from the overwhelm and finally create the impact you've been working so hard for, I want you to grab the Leadership Legacy Playbook. This guide gives you the exact strategies to lead with purpose and leave your mark on the world. Don't keep putting off the legacy that you want to build. Grab the link in the show notes and start building your legacy today.